I biked through a storm to lend my only microscope lens. And 12 years later, she mapped a parasite that saved our harvests. My name is Ansel Quade. In my pocket, I keep a knurled retaining ring, dull silver, thumb-worn, all that's left of the 40-power lens I once called mine. When worry fogs the slide, I roll the ring and remember. Sometimes the clearest view is the one you give away. It was a monsoon night that stapled water to your face. The lab called Liora Field Sample Girl because she brought in leaves that still smelled like dawn. That evening, she had a petiole wrapped in foil, a clock on it. 6 hours before the structure's collapse, she whispered, as if the parasite could overhear. Her scope's objective had burned out. Mine was the only 40 left awake in our corner of the city. A blue-dotted 40X with a faint comet scratch that taught me humility. "Borrow mine," I said. "Your qualls?" "Later," I lied. I strapped the lens in a tin of cotton and biked into rain that turned roads into rumors. Halfway there, a gutter river grabbed my wheel. The tin cracked. The lens rolled like a tiny planet. I found it by sound, tick against a storm drain bar, dried it with the edge of my shirt and kept going because that is what you do when someone else's 6 hours are louder than your own 12 months. In the stairwell, Liora took the tin with hands that had memorized routes. She twisted the lens home, seat, breathe, and smiled at the blue dot like a lighthouse had blinked. "Yes." "Side light," I said, angling a lamp. "Let the scatter speak." She nodded, closed one eye, and fell into the ocean inside the leaf. "Hello," she whispered. "You again." On the screen, a hush of flagella, a patient swarm threaded through cells like quiet weather. She clicked a photo, then another, then traced their route with a pencil on a focus card. A tiny sketch in the corner showing how the comet scratch aligned when the parasite danced true. When her sample stabilized, I left. In the hall, she pressed something into my hand. The retaining ring slipped free in the rush. "Keep it," she said, "in case we forget the shape of this night." I failed my qualifying run the next week. The storm had oxidized the lens. Images came like rumors. My advisor called it self-sabotage dressed as charity. He wasn't entirely wrong. I left the program 2 seasons later and became the person people called when a scope breathed wrong. I told myself I was still inside science, just at the hinge. People think science is mostly answers. It is mostly staying with difficult images. Liora stayed. Her grants evaporated into prettier proposals. Her samples spoiled on buses that broke down in heat that broke down conversation. She learned to build a camera slider from a jar lid and tape. She named her notebooks after weather. Drizzle, squall, humidity that thinks it's a person. When the data ran thin, she would open the drawer where she kept a blue enamel dot taped under the bench light and say, "We keep looking until the quiet decides to speak." She failed often. A whole season of rice turned sick bronze. Farmers gathered on porches and held their hands like bowls that wanted rain to change its mind. She didn't promise fixes. She promised maps, where the parasite moved, when it slept, what light made it honest. I stayed in my own way. I tuned microscopes and bicycles, 2 machines that forgive you if you listen. At night, I ran a tiny shop behind the co-op, fixing gears while reading field notes printed on receipts. On good evenings, Liora would swing by with a sample packed in a lunchbox and the kind of exhaustion that has manners. We'd talk about the difference between precision and patience. Sometimes I wanted to tell her I missed the way the comet scratch used to slide into alignment at the last second. Mostly, I kept the ring in my pocket and tried to unclench my name from the thing I didn't finish. Years braided themselves. A regional food council called Live Rollout, Low-Cost Parasite Atlas. If Liora's protocol landed, farmers could see in time to change water, rotate plots, save harvests that bureaucracies call acceptable losses. She named the kit Open Field Atlas. Camera bracket from scrap, light diffuser from milk jug, printable focus card with a tiny comet she drew from memory. She rehearsed in a warehouse that smelled like rope and rain. Demo day arrived with a familiar drum. Generator flicker. Microphones afraid of themselves. A room full of people who write soil like a surname. Liora set the slide. Her new 40 clicked in. Clean, sharp, severe. Too severe. The parasite blurred, shy under a light that didn't know how to forgive. She reached for her focus card. Gone. Papers shuffled like birds that had not agreed who would lead. At the back, I stood with a wrench in my pocket and a ring in my palm. By then, I wore a mechanic's jacket that could pass for armor if you didn't look too long. She didn't see me. Why should she? I had become the background hum, useful, unspecific. I tapped the table with the ring, tick, tick, and the sound braided itself into her worry. Her head turned a fraction, the way a sunflower remembers. I walked forward slowly so the room could decide I wasn't a surprise. I held up a square of lens cloth embroidered in the corner, AQ40. A joke my lab mates had stitched years ago before we knew what storms could cost. Half turn past focus, I said, voice low. Then breathe back, and side light like a patient friend. She blinked and gave me the faintest smile a person can give when the wrong thing would ruin them. We angled the lamp so it grazed the slide like mourning over stubble. I rolled the fine focus past sharp. The image snapped and then softened, and came back a breath, to the place where the comet would have aligned if it still belonged to anyone. On screen, the parasite lifted its head, if you can call that bright shiver a head, and showed its root. A hush moved through the hall that sounded like rain changing shape. Liora began to speak, not triumphant, not selling, just naming. This is the window when treatment works and runoff doesn't poison tomorrow. This is how you see that window with things you already own. This is the part the manuals call noise. It is not noise. It is behavior. Farmers leaned forward, elbows on knees the way knowledge prefers. A child in the back whispered, "It looks like the sea." On the projector, Liora traced the swarm's path with a dry marker, then showed the map overlay that turned motion into warning, warning into a saved row. The council approved the rollout before the generator could change its mood. Open Field Atlas went on a website, then on trucks, then into hands with soil under the nails. Liora trained co-ops to print focus cards and to angle the light like kindness. After the session, in the quiet corner where people go to eat an orange and remember their names, Liora walked over. Up close, time had written on both of us with a soft pencil. She didn't say thank you. She did something better. She opened a small box. Inside, my blue dotted 40, the glass replaced, the comet recut so faint you had to be patient to greet it. "I found your lens in the inventory of a lab that went dark," she said. "I bought it for $17 and a story. The scratch? I had them kiss it back in because some ghosts help you focus." She placed the lens in my palm. It felt heavier than forgiveness and lighter than regret. I threaded the knurled ring onto it and left it there. "Keep it," I said. "Maps belong with their map maker." She shook her head. "Then we share it, like light." We stood by the door as rain figured itself out on the awning. In the distance, a field learned that this year, late blight would arrive and be seen and be met. We didn't take a picture. We let the image live where good images live. Between patience and precision. Between one person's storm and another's harvest.